Jonathan Lamb just destroyed Joni Lamb on live TV, and you wouldn't believe why. The family feud between members of the Lamb family doesn't look like it'd be ending anytime soon. Back in 2020, Jonathan and Susie Lamb first came out with allegations that a family member had molested their daughter on a family vacay. For years later, allegations that the Lamb family matriarch and patriarch were involved in covering up the case have risen. This time around, Jonathan and Susie have been forced to air the family's dirty laundry in public, including on live TV. What has Jonathan got to say about his mother? Let's find out. Tense family relations. Joni Lamb is a very respected figure in the world of Christian televangelism. Back in 1997, she and her late husband, Marcus Lamb, collectively began the Daystar television network with a mission to spread the gospel through all means possible. These days, however, Joni's name has found itself in the pages of scandals and controversies. But unlike the first major controversy, which took place back in 2010, this time around, it just might be enough to break her family for good. To better understand the issues concerning the family, we need to travel a couple of years ago to 2021 when CEO Marcus Lamb passed away from COVID complications. The line of succession wasn't exactly established, but many believe that the president's position should have gone to his son, Jonathan Lamb. From a young age, Jonathan had been very invested not just in the family job, but also in religion. He'd spent a lot of time finding himself and his faith, and he had high hopes of helping many others across the globe do the same. Even before his father's death, Jonathan took up very important roles in the ministry. In fact, he was even made vice president. However, upon his father's passing, he was seemingly overlooked for the presidential position. It certainly wasn't because he was unqualified. Why then? Because his mother, Joni, had intentions of taking up the role. Shortly after her husband's death, Joni, his widow, was made president. Many believe this was the beginning of the tense moments for the family, as some allege that Jonathan was supposed to have that position but was instead made vice president. According to viewers, he had worked hard enough and deserved that role, but clearly, his mother had other plans for him. Fast forward to 2024, and Jonathan was fired from his job as vice president. Although the reason behind this sudden decision was unknown at the time, Jonathan would later share that it was because he had refused to sign an NDA for some undisclosed reason at the time and was demoted for what are called deficiencies. However, the ministry and Joni had something different to say. According to them, Jonathan had been fired because he had failed to satisfy a detailed performance improvement plan. Joni went on to say that the decision to terminate her son came after a 15-month review of his performance. Jonathan was terminated from the family TV company on November 16, according to a termination letter he shared with news stations. The letter contained a confidentiality agreement he had signed when he first joined Daystar, saying he would be subject to defamation laws if he made untrue or misleading statements about Daystar or its leaders. Fueled by this agreement, Jonathan believed that Daystar had a submission culture, and as a result, he believed he was removed from the network's board and from his role as vice president in April 2023 and later put on the performance improvement plan because he refused to sign a non-disclosure agreement. In fact, an emailed statement from Daystar said, Jonathan Lamb is no longer a part of Daystar television network following his repeated failure to comply with a performance improvement plan, PIP, that expired the day before his termination. According to Jonathan, he was put on a performance improvement plan in April 2024 and was placed in charge of the network's cafe, facilities, and distribution departments. In his words, they were placing me in this position as a form of punishment for not agreeing to their demands of signing the NDA. The copies of the performance improvement plan Jonathan was put on before his termination were shared both by himself and Daystar. The plan included 6 points, the third of which concerned social media. It said, refrain from posting comments in a conversation, text or email or on your or Susie's blogs and social media regarding any of the following without first obtaining the written approval of its content from the CEO or a trustee. 1. Your reassignment. 2. The existence or contents of this plan. 3. Decisions or actions taken by Daystar leadership on any topic. 4. The appearance or non-appearance of you or Susie on programs or broadcasts of Daystar. The plan's fifth point concerned Joni's marriage. It read, you have expressed religious objections relating to the marriage of Doug Weiss to CEO Joni Lamb. As you know, Joni is the CEO of Daystar, and their marriage is legally recognized and has been vetted and affirmed as biblical by credible pastoral counselors. But what exactly is the deal with Joni's remarriage? Here's the thing, Joni is a Christian who preaches against all forms of sin, including divorce for non-biblical reasons. However, when it came time to remarry in 2023, she chose to tie the knot with a man who divorced his wife 2 months after her previous husband's death. To make matters worse, this man wasn't just any man, he was Dr. Doug Weiss, a family friend and a guest on their show numerous times. The woman he divorced was Lisa Weiss, his wife of over 30 years. But the issue wasn't the divorce, it was the fact that he did it for no biblical reason, instead claiming spiritual abandonment. While this might have been enough for Joni to say, "I do," to him, Jonathan wasn't having any of it. According to him, he wasn't particularly fond of his mother's new relationship, especially since he took Marcus' place on the network, co-hosting the Round Table Talk with Joni. Joni would later add that Jonathan and Susie were comfortable with the union until they learned that Doug would be joining her as co-host. Allegedly, Doug co-hosting was the major issue that led Daystar to fire Jonathan, as he and Susie gradually came to a point where they couldn't endorse Joni's marriage. As to them, it was adulterous. In fact, Susie allegedly shared that Lisa had begged Doug not to divorce her, but for some reason best known to him, he decided to. Since his termination, according to an emailed statement from Daystar, Jonathan has engaged in a smear campaign using false allegations against Daystar and its leadership. Based on a clear and documented pattern, it is clear this smear campaign is the result of Jonathan not being designated as the future president of Daystar following the untimely death of Daystar's founder, Marcus Lamb. Interestingly, Joni shared that Marcus had first willed the ministry to his son, Jonathan, but when Jonathan and his wife kept pursuing the molestation case against her and Marcus' decision, the latter rewrote his will 2 months before his death, giving Joni the right of inheritance of Daystar. In a video addressing the company's leadership changes, she acknowledged that her husband's death had divided the family. In her words, Jonathan was extremely disappointed that he was not named the future president of Daystar following the death of his father and my husband Marcus Lamb. Jonathan's disappointment in not getting his way only deepened when I married Dr. Doug Weiss, who has been such a blessing to me, the rest of my family, and Daystar. Jonathan, on the other hand, stuck to his story that the rift between him and his mother grew because he had religious objections to her marriage to Doug. As we've seen time and again, family dynamics can become deeply complicated, sometimes heartbreakingly so. Such is the current situation with Joni, her son, his wife, and their daughter. Journalist Julie Roys, through the Roys Report, published an article on November 20, 2024, that has since become a lightning rod for controversy. Daystar's legal team swiftly responded with a 10-page cease and desist letter, accusing Julie of publishing false allegations of intimate molestation concerning Jonathan and Susie's daughter. Julie shared the letter sent by Michael D. Anderson, an attorney representing Daystar Television Network, on X, issued through the law firm Kelly Hart. The letter demanded that she retract or correct her recent investigative articles by the deadline, or face a lawsuit. This marked the second such demand made by Daystar, signaling escalating tensions between the two parties. In the letter, Anderson accused the Roys Report of fabricating statements and engaging in what he described as a smear campaign orchestrated by Jonathan and Susie, both former associates of Daystar. He wrote, "The Roys Report published a series of statements, as identified in my November 24, 2024, letter, that are false and have zero basis in truth or fact. The statements were fabricated as part of the smear campaign that Jonathan and Susie Lamb launched against my clients. The Roys Report does not have any evidence to support the statements outlined in the articles other than the unsubstantiated claims made by Jonathan and Susie Lamb." Anderson went on to emphasize that the Roys Report cannot escape liability for the false statements it published, and warned of impending legal action should the demands for retraction not be met. The Roys Report, however, stood firm. In a reply sent the same day, their attorney, Christine Jones, rejected Anderson's arguments, expressing confidence in the integrity of the publication's reporting. She pointed out that Daystar had been given a chance to comment before publication and that their brief response had been included in the first article. When asked by the Christian Post about Joni Lamb's public response to the allegations, Julie expressed skepticism and highlighted several unanswered questions. Although Joni, the president of Daystar and a prominent figure in Christian broadcasting, had recently addressed the controversy in a video discussion, Julie found her account lacking. In her words, beyond the apparent contradiction we reported in our article today, I think the video discussion is most notable for the questions the women don't ask and Joni doesn't answer. For example, no one asks Joni about her alleged one-on-one meeting with Jonathan and Susie's daughter the morning after the girl reportedly told her mother she'd been abused. Why did Joni want to meet with the girl one-on-one? And can Joni explain why the girl reportedly won't talk about the alleged abuse since meeting with Joni? Julie also pressed for clarity on other issues. According to her, Joni claims the incident at the beach house with Pete was resolved soon after it occurred. If that's true, why was there an internal investigation? Also, the forensic counselor who conducted that investigation claims Joni and Marcus shut down the investigation before the counselor was able to conduct a decent interview with Pete. Does Joni deny she did that? If not, why did she and Marcus shut it down? According to Julie, her reporting is grounded in extensive interviews and evidence, yet Daystar has chosen to respond selectively. I asked Daystar many specific questions about the allegations, but so far, they've responded only to the questions they wish to discuss. There are many more questions that beg to be answered, she asserted. Joni, for her part, has dismissed the allegations as part of a broader effort to discredit her and the network. She claims her actions have been misrepresented. In the video discussion, she recalled her first awareness of any abuse allegations in 2020 when Susie, her daughter-in-law, contacted her about an incident involving her granddaughter at preschool. My first knowledge of any allegation of abuse was in November 2020, and Susie called me and said there had been an incident at my granddaughter's preschool, Lamb said. She told me that something had happened where a little boy touched her and her friend. And so she called me and asked me if I would go to the school with her. I said, absolutely. So I went with her to the school. We reported it to the school, and of course, I was there to encourage and support as I would for any child, but especially my granddaughter. Joni framed this incident as an isolated misunderstanding, suggesting that subsequent claims have been distorted. That was the incident that happened, and yet what's being written is just taken out of context. I was there and Susie actually called me to go there. So this word about you covering up, there's no truth to that, she said. However, Jonathan and Susie, now estranged from Daystar, provided a different account of events. They claim that central to the controversy is an incident Susie reportedly brought to the attention of her late father-in-law, Marcus, before his passing. Susie alleges that her young daughter confided in her about being molested by a family member identified only as Pete. According to Julie's article, the incident occurred when Pete allegedly followed the 5-year-old upstairs as she changed into a swimsuit. Susie described the man's demeanor as eerie, noting his eyes seemed to go black, like he was in a zombie mode. She had immediately alerted Jonathan, who rushed upstairs to find the relative in the same room as his daughter. He recounted the horrifying moment he entered the room to find his daughter completely naked with Pete present, saying, "To my horror, when I got up there, my daughter was completely naked, and he was in the room. I was just immediately like, 'What are you doing?' Screaming at the top of my lungs. And he is like, 'I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry.' He apologized like 50 times, like I caught somebody red-handed." The Lambs took their concerns to the police, initially keeping the incident under wraps from the rest of the family. However, according to the report, authorities initially closed the case because the child was unable to articulate specific details. The case was reportedly reopened later and is said to be pending with the Colleyville Police Department in Texas. Meanwhile, Pete's lawyer has denied the allegations, maintaining his client's innocence. As if the allegations weren't distressing enough, the aftermath has been equally chaotic. The aftermath. Following Jonathan's firing from Daystar, he and Susie released a video claiming they were being harassed and followed and have since gone into hiding at an undisclosed location. According to them, the only reason they were going public with the news was to let everyone know that they were afraid for their lives for keeping their convictions, which went against their mother, Joni. Joni, on the other hand, hasn't relented. She recently fired back against allegations made by Jonathan and Susie, claiming she covered up the sexual abuse of her granddaughter by a family member. According to Joni, the situation has been wildly misrepresented, and she emphatically denied any wrongdoing during a recent episode of Joni Table Talk. Addressing the claims, Joni stated, "Absolutely a lie. I never covered up anything. Marcus didn't cover up anything." She argued that the allegations are part of a damaging narrative spread by a blogger with no first-hand knowledge of the situation. According to her, her granddaughter's claims involved an incident at preschool, not a family member, framing this as an attack designed to destroy her family. At the moment, the conflict is no longer just a private matter, it's a public unraveling of a family deeply tied to their faith and ministry. Regardless of what the truth might be, Joni's firm stance has led to a backlash, with some people withdrawing from Daystar programming altogether. And yet, she shows no sign of stepping back, even as the situation grows increasingly messy. But let's cut to the heart of the issue. This should be about protecting the child, and here's what everyone, including Joni, Jonathan, and Susie, must remember. Facts state that children rarely lie about molestation, especially intimate ones. These days, it's more about who said what than addressing the main issue, which is protecting the young girl from further harm and getting her the justice she deserves. But the family feud is hard to look away from, considering how much it has escalated. It's also hard not to wonder about Joni's new husband, who is reportedly a counselor. With all his experience, shouldn't he be stepping in to help mediate this explosive situation? Instead, the family conflict is playing out like a soap opera, and the child's well-being seems to have taken a back seat. At the end of the day, this fractured family needs to prioritize healing over hurling accusations. It's time for everyone involved to rally around the child and put aside personal vendettas. And maybe, just maybe, Grandma Joni should consider acting less like a public defender and more like a grandmother. However, it doesn't look like things might change anytime soon. With Jonathan and Susie calling Joni out on live TV, the situation at Daystar appears to have evolved into a deeply contentious legal and public relations battle, with far-reaching implications for the network's reputation and leadership. Known for its global reach, Daystar claims to broadcast to 2.3 billion homes and 6.85 billion people worldwide, positioning itself as a significant force in Christian media. However, these allegations, coupled with Julie's unyielding reporting, threaten to disrupt that image. As of now, the dispute shows no signs of resolution. Both sides remain entrenched. The core questions, which center on accountability, transparency, and the treatment of vulnerable individuals, remain unresolved, leaving a cloud of uncertainty over Daystar's leadership and future.